You're the city's most famous contrarian, someone who makes money by shorting.
Yes.
How do you feel about it, and are you passionate about that way of work?
I just correct you on one point. There are plenty of other contrarians besides myself, and indeed now it is accepted wisdom that the only way to make money in the stock market is by taking a view that is contrary to that generally held by the market. I suppose the time will come when being a contrarian, since it's an attitude adopted by everybody, will be a wholly unproductive strategy. But at the moment, I've had some fun being of a contrary nature. But that is my nature anyway, so it's nothing unusual about it.
So talk about this Evel Knievel pseudonym that you've got.
Well, I think you'll recall that this friend of mine came round to my house, and after studying the accounts of Maxwell Communication Corporation, it was decided that I would write a note. Well, actually, we wrote it jointly, and I typed it out. And it had to be given an authorship. So I said, note of the review of the accounts of Maxwell Communication Corporation by Mr. So-and-so and myself. And he said, you can't put my name in. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, well, you don't know how securities law works. And I said to him, well, you're quite right, I have no idea. And of course he was very right, because I had no idea how foolish and nasty these regulators are. I mean, they really are a nasty bit of work, not to be trusted at all. And they're ultimately very, very silly people as well, I hasten to add. Anyway, just to compromise, because I had to give the note an authorship, I put in Evel Knievel, and spelt live ink backwards. And that seemed to tickle me. And I really thought no more about it. At midnight that night, I faxed the note to all London's market makers covering Maxwell Communication Corporation, because I was short of Maxwell Communication Corporation, and I wanted to be sure that the truth got out quickly, and so as they adjusted their books. Of course, the result was that the market makers, or some of them, or one of them, handed a copy of the note that I had faxed to Maxwell, who of course immediately blew up and said this is the most disgraceful assault on a patriotic Englishman, or something like that, which was the usual line of garbage from that appalling fellow. And anyway, so the birth of Evel Knievel in practice was established. Later on, I found that people, to deflect attention from their own operations, kept on saying it was Evel Knievel what did it. Well, I am what David Dimbleby would call a natural communicator, and it didn't bother me to be accused of communicating. It didn't occur to me that I was really being accused of assisting them in their nefarious enterprises. I just didn't know the law. Instead, the law is terribly flawed, and it's been devised by and implemented by foolish, silly people. But that's a fact. At the time, I didn't know that was the law. Anyway, I found that when the Daily Mail, a few weeks later, referred to Evel Knievel, I realized that I had caught the public's imagination. Well, I say the public. I caught the attention of people who traded shares in the city. Because the one thing I would say about investors and investing advisors is they have got a sense of humor, which I'm afraid a lot of people haven't. Anyway, as a result, Evel Knievel just tickled people's imagination. Actually, it had quite a power to it, because I would ring up chaps at firms of brokers whereat I dealt, and I would leave a message in his absence, And the receptionist, it was invariably a woman in those days, who'd be acting as a telephonist, would take a message and ask as to from whom the message came. It was from Evel Knievel. Now, I don't know what people's attitude nowadays is, but the fact is, women have always thought evil a very powerful term. I think quite a number of people generally still think it's quite a powerful term nowadays. But it's certainly stuck, and therefore the joke spiraled up a bit. As to whether I am actually evil must be for others to judge, but I don't think so.
No, I think partly for a woman as well, knowing that hearing it was Evel Knievel, even in the 90s, he was a legend. And you're not going to, he was a reasonably, I think he was an attractive sort of hero type, wasn't he? So, oh God, Evel Knievel, you're going to pass the message on.
I don't think I sounded like an American bicyclist, but
no,
you must be the judge.
Well, yeah. So when did you take the plunge then into going into short selling?
It was in or about 1986 with a company called Access Satellite, which clearly wasn't working. As I remember, it was promoted by a now defunct firm of brokers called Montague Lobel Stanley. They were well respected, but they misjudged this one, and I had the good fortune to encounter a fellow who was putting up a competing product and knew jolly well what Access Satellite offered and why it wasn't working. And so, as a result, I felt very well informed such that I could take a view on Access Satellite as a company, and I was therefore able to approach the bear raid in an organized fashion. For instance, there was something that I did for the first time then, which I'd never done before, which was to get hold of a copy of the Register of Shareholders, and as a result I was able to approach shareholders directly, personally, by telephone, which I did in the evening from my office. And I asked them why they held Access Satellite. And of course, some would say my purpose was to panic them into selling. Well, in fact, I have never operated that way, and I've certainly never lied about shares, ever. I may have misjudged them, but I can tell you I've never lied. However, I asked people as to why they held on Montague Lobel Stanley's advice these shares, and there were other advisors, and I think I put doubts in their minds. Well, of course, the result of that was that they tended to sell their shareholdings, or some of them did, and as a result, the share price started to decline. And it was then that the management of Access Satellite became greatly exercised.
So what about becoming known as a great bear trader than a great bull then?
Well, there are all sorts of people who've done very well on the bull tack, and I may add, on a much larger scale than I ever have. However, it amused me to make money by simply highlighting that the emperor had no clothes. And that was clearly fairly novel at the time. Now, of course, it's commonplace, and there are many people who write very well and accurately and timelessly on shares as regards the bear case, and I don't claim any particular skills in relation to these upstarts, as I might choose to call them.